Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner, and I'm joined today by the mighty Lauren Noding, Titan Comics PR manager, and our very special guest, Victoria V.E. Schwab, long-time returning Forbidden Planet TV guest, and Enid Balám from the wonderful book that these guys are working together on, Extraordinary. That we're here to tell you all about today. Guys, how are you both?
I'm well.
How are you doing?
Me too. Me too. I'm fantastic. I'm feeling fantastic. An extraordinary week, beautiful day. Spring has sprouted here in Mexico, so lovely weather. So a lovely day to work.
I'm so jealous. In France, it definitely hasn't decided yet if it's spring. And so every day it's like hail, rain, sunshine. You just pop outside anytime the sky goes blue.
Yeah, I mean, we are covering off the world here because we've got London, we've got France, and we've got Mexico all in this one call. Such is the glorious creative world in which you guys operate. Now, Victoria and Enid, what can you tell me about Extraordinary?
Extraordinary is a comic book series set in the same world as my villains books, Vicious and Vengeful, and the eventual Victorious, the eventual third book. And it's set between Vicious and Vengeful. There's a 5-year gap between the novels. And this comic is set in between those, in that 5-year gap. And so it follows people for whom near-death experiences result in superpowers. And so that's kind of the world into which you're stepping. And that's what Enid's work is so amazing at, is a very, very visual lexicon of how to portray those superpowers and the dynamism of the action of it. So Enid, I got to get it over to you. I am in awe of the work you've done.
Thank you. Well, when I first read a summarized version of what was to come of the story, my first thought was about Cassandra Smith. You know, it is a very particular sense to portray a vision, a particular way to see the world, in a sense of what would it feel in a character to know what's going to happen to others. You know, it is very deep, and the script is very well balanced, because it has some technical issues, some technical notes, and a very literary sense to it, because it allows me to create without getting back to the script, you know, to find has to be this way. No, it has a note, a very clean and polished intention, and then it has also a room to create. So it's been a lot of fun to see, to read, and to get involved with this amazing story.
Well, and I just want to say that's my favorite. The thing I learned from doing my last comic is that the most exciting part of my creative process from the writing side is figuring out exactly how much freedom I can give the artist. Because while there are certain technical elements that I know I want to have portrayed, there's probably only 1 or 2 pages in an issue where I feel like it needs to be executed in a specific sequence. And so one of the most exciting things is getting to say to the artist, all right, here's what has to come across in this series of panels, but it's up to you to find the most you way to do it. And that to me is the feature of it.
Yeah, it is. It's really amazing. I mean, I tend to not read all the script. I always leave 5 or 4 pages to get to that when I'm drawing. So I'm also amazed. I mean, I feel that emotion, and I'm always following the script, and I want to know what's going to happen. So I tend to follow that, and I'm enjoying it. I mean, I'm feeling always like I want to finish because I want to read what's going to happen.
That's a beautiful set of answers. And by the way, everybody watching this, you can check out Enid's beautiful artwork if you click on the links to pre-order attached to this interview. Issue 0 is publishing at the beginning of April, and you can pre-order it right here. Now, Lauren, I know that you're busting with a ton of questions, so
I really am. What drew you to near-death experiences? Like, have you taken a lot of inspiration from survivor stories, like real-life survivor stories? And as kind of Enid mentioned, there's a bit of the Cassandra myth. Like, did you take any influence from any other mythologies? Because there's just so much on this kind of premise, isn't there? So yeah.
Well, I wanted to write a supervillain story originally when I wrote Vicious, and in order to do that, I wanted to write origin stories, and I wanted to find a unique way to come up with the superhero origin story that I could tie really closely to medical science, because I think that the best, most accessible fantasies or most exciting fantasies are ones that are layered right over the top of our world. And so I wanted to create a believable superhero generator, if you will. And so to do that, I looked at medical science, and I looked at, you know, the evidence that we see for momentary influxes of adrenaline, moments where, you know, mothers can lift cars off babies, that kind of thing. And I just kind of, by keeping one foot on reality, I took the other foot off and said, okay, well, what if that could affect a permanent change? What does that mean? And so it was about taking the near-death experience as a conduit, as my vat of acid, as my spider bite, and making that. And what was really cool about that is I then got to break it down into kind of an existential way and say, okay, you have the physical trauma of the near-death experience, but how do we choose the actual powers? And so what I was able to do then is say, okay, well, what if the actual powers are born not only of the near-death experience itself, but of your psychology,
the type
your
of
last
person.
thoughts are, what you're, you know, what you're feeling at that moment. And so for our Cassandra, for our Charlotte, our hero in this, she has a moment right before the bus crash, where she's thinking about the fact that she can see the outside world and the reflection. And it's this idea of that last moment where you just think like, not yet, and you think about what you're seeing. And so for her, she now can see death in reflective surfaces.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool.
I specifically wanted to give her a power, because I knew this was a comic, not a novel. I wanted to give her a power that lent to a visual space. Because you've got Victor Vale in the books, who has the ability to control other people's pain thresholds, which is a cool power, but it doesn't manifest visually. And Eli's does to an extent, because he heals. But Charlotte's ability, I knew it was going to be either a minefield or an adventure for my illustrator to have every semi-reflective surface around a character portray their deaths around them.
It's such a wonderfully evocative concept, and I think Enid, from the work that we've seen here and the viewers of outside haven't seen yet, I know how harmonious your art style is to that concept. Were you familiar with Victoria's work before working on this book, or was the whole universe that Victoria's created fresh to you?
Unfortunately, I have to say no, but I think the near-death experience has resonated around the world. I mean, it's a matter of fact, in the paranormal genre, there is a lot of reading of it, and there's a lot of, you can see it in TV. I mean, it's something common that we all have experience. I mean, we all have known someone has experienced. There's a lot of folk even around that theme. So it just came to my life as a very interesting thing to draw. I mean, I was waiting for a new job, and then when this came and I read it, I was like, I want to draw this. I mean, I'm so excited. It is something that I wanted to do, because I mean, it's common to all of us, it's known, but it's portrayed in a very different sense. I mean, it's not something you could deduce, but it's inviting. I think it has a very finesse, literary deepness.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. As a reader, I think that's absolutely right. It must be such a wonderful thing, I think, to be a writer like yourself, Victoria, and to have created so many, so many worldscapes almost where that's your world and you create the written word on the page. And now you've entered this phase of your career, which is very much about visual collaboration, whether that, in various mediums, comic books and elsewhere. What's that process like for you? How does that feel?
It's a gift.
Yeah.
I mean, writing novels is my life. It is. I feel like everything else is icing, but it's a lonely process and the images only exist in my head. And the goal as a novelist is to essentially create a movie in my head, transcribe that movie onto paper in such a way that it will play exactly the same in somebody else's head. It's a very specific challenge. I feel like it's the greatest gift in the world when I get to hand a roadmap for that movie to another artist with a different skill set and say, how would you see this movie? And that's a beautiful sense of collaboration. I look at it like I am excited every day to open my email and see how Enid has conceived of something that I've only played in my own head. And I've specifically, kind of as we talked about at the beginning, played it vaguely. So I haven't wanted to become attached to the exact visuals of it. And so it's exciting to me to create that space and then be able to give to Enid and say, tell me a story.
That must feel amazing. And for you, Enid, on what you've been working on so far, do you have a particular sequence, a particular moment that leaps out as it's been the most satisfying for you to illustrate?
Yeah, I cannot talk much about the content of the stories, but I have certainly quite a few. There are some spaces where I'm always thinking about. Well, I have read here and there that there is like a space of fight between TV series and comic books. Like comic books are receding or being less appreciated in regards to TV series. But on the contrary, I think they communicate to each other. I mean, I watch TV series, so I'm always thinking the page construct as something that could also be for TV or for a movie. I'm thinking on both ways. So when I pick a sequence, I always think from a film thinking, because I tend to do, if someone is drinking some glass of water, at the end of the page perhaps has less water. So continuity, and there are some elements that I try to keep in mind. So it's not, when you read the comic, it's not reality, but as Victoria said, it has always a permanent foot on the mystery and the unconceivable things, no, the fantastic things.
Yeah, no, well said, mate. Lauren, we're racing towards the end of our session here, so I know you've got at least one more question, so far away.
So this has definitely got to be my favorite, purely because I love hearing about this type of stuff about the creators. But if you guys were an EO, what would your power be, do you think? If it was based on your personality or, just like your soul, I suppose, how do you think it would come out? Like, what would it translate as?
For me, it would definitely be time. I think my final thoughts on this earth, no matter how I go, would be, I wish I had more time. And so I think because of that, I think I would be an EO, or I would certainly choose to be an EO who had some control over time, with the caveat that I have no interest in going back. So for me, it's like, I would like to be able to pause so I can catch my breath. Sometimes I feel like time is racing by, and I'd like to be able to slow down to enjoy moments and to speed up. But I definitely feel like it would be something to do with the desire for time.
Yeah, that makes sense. How about you, Enid?
Oh, I was thinking, if I may, why don't you tell us, you guys tell us, what would be your EO power?
Oh, that's a great question. You go first, Lauren.
Well, I think it would probably be to do with reading minds or reading souls or something. I think I'm quite good at kind of picking up things about people around me. I'm very observant, so I think it would probably be to do with that. What about you, Andrew?
Well, it's funny you should say that, mate, because it's very close to what my answer would have been. And so to give some context about my answer, I've spent 30 years as a journalist. And in that time, what you're really trying to do is to get in that time you spend with people, however long or however short, whether it's 10 minutes or whether it's an hour, whether it's a day, you're trying to get to some sense of truth about who they are and how they see the world and what they're trying to contribute to the world. If I could have any power, it would be to instinctively and immediately understand my fellow human beings, so that I could, when I meet them and they open their mouths, I could absolutely get to the truth of who they are unerringly. You know, I would love to be able to do that. And of course, it's impossible. In the real world, it's impossible to do that. But I would love to have that power. Yeah. And how about yourself, Enid? Have you got anything that comes to mind?
I love plants, so I think I would rather stay with the beautiful plants. You know, there's perhaps some type of horticulture power.
Yeah.
I love plants. They give me a sense of peace, and they make me I don't know, they sort of teach things, you know, this thing of winter is over and then spring, and they have some time of very beautiful timing, and they don't question, oh, I have to work today on this, or I have to finish it. They just do what they have to do, and it is just a delight to perhaps pursue. Well, I'm now trying to understand bonsai, so I'm trying to think about time, about how they do things, and it is quite. I'm quite fond of plants, so I think it is a very beautiful space for me to develop a superpower.
I actually think that is a beautiful answer, and having met you and having only been familiar with your work over the last couple of months, I think that your answer gives a tremendous insight into the work that you produce, you know, which has this almost hypnotically beautiful effect, I think, you know. And it seems to me, you know, is the work of a peaceful soul, which that answer is very much the answer of a peaceful soul. You know, I've been privileged enough to have a number of chats with Victoria about our work over the last year or two and get to know. But I've got to tell you, mate, it's been such a pleasure to chat with both of you at the same time about this wonderful book, which I'm telling you, anybody who's a fan of Victoria's or anybody who's a fan of good comics, you're going to really love. Enid, yeah, please, mate.
I'm
Oh, you're great. Yeah, good man. Yeah, absolutely. And this fine book, you can order it from the links attached to this video. And I'm certain that sooner rather than later, we'll be talking to this fine creative team again once we've got more published copies of the book, of the comic, that we can talk to them about. So Victoria, Enid, thanks so much for joining myself and Lauren today. It's been lovely chatting with you, as always.
Total pleasure.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.